service or exchanging sexual favors for the food. The main gangs merged and warred until they'd entrenched themselves in an impromptu fiefdom. In less than 2 weeks, the town had gone from a happy little place to a war zone, with more than half the population dead. Then the creatures started roaming, and even more disappeared by the day. At first, it had been sightings, mainly. Things glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, abnormally large rats, cats that acted weird, or dogs that went feral suddenly. The first few days were hard, as people learned that the animals they'd loved all their lives were now dangerous. People decided they couldn't risk it, and either put their pets down or turn them out. Roaming packs of dogs, cats by the dozens that fought all night long, and worse, filled the streets. The territorial wars clearly weren't limited to humanity, as entire sections of the local area became overrun with feral packs that would attack as soon as look at you. Between the beasts, as many people came to call the changed animals to differentiate them, and the gangs, the streets began to run red with blood. The gang started to go street by street, taking what they wanted, recruiting the prettiest and most handsome, and collecting the food for the vulnerable. Not that half of them could pronounce the word, they were too drunk on stolen booze and power. Chris decided his home wasn't safe anymore and gathered up his gear, moving out into the forest. He had to risk the animals and creatures rather than the gangs, as there wasn't a day that passed without pitched battles somewhere within earshot. Now he'd been living in the forest for a few days. The others who'd seen the signs and either, like him, had always enjoyed camping or had military training and didn't want to be a part of the gangs, declared an uneasy truce. They formed a small community and moved deeper into the forests and onto the old Lord Lambton's country land. The river bar had been their latest target. Unwilling as they were to attack people, they'd watch the bar for 2 days, making sure that the only person there was the bouncer who'd claimed it, a massive brute of a man. And they'd made their plans. Becky had volunteered to act as the distraction. Young, buxom, and pretty, she'd deliberately and strategically torn a dirty top to expose a lot more skin than she would ever dare to normally, and she'd gone looking for some bottled water, hanging back well out of reach as she asked for it. The bouncer had made it clear there was only one way she'd get anything from him, and she'd begged and wheedled, keeping his attention, her pale skin drawing the eye as she shifted uncertainly from foot to foot and bounced a little to keep his interest. While she did that, the others had moved in, Benny climbing in through the small window into the kitchen. Even then, it was barely large enough for the skinniest of their number to slide through. Once he'd wriggled frantically into the dark interior, he'd carefully clambered down onto the filth-covered old steel bench before flicking the latch on the kitchen door and letting the rest inside. They'd move quickly, gathering up tins, jars, anything that would last well in the forest. It had been going well, the bar's restaurant having been restocked only the day before the fall, until one of the more desperate and idiotic members of the group had decided it was worth the risk to try to grab some booze from the bar as well as food from the kitchen. As soon as he'd entered the bar, he'd tripped on something, knocking stacked containers over, and made enough noise that the pair of massive, mutated dogs the asshole kept in cages started howling and drew his attention. The bouncer guessed then what had happened, made a clumsy grab for Becky, who broke away and ran for it. Then he grabbed his club, and the violence began. He killed 2 of their number, reducing them to 11, and as Chris ran, his breath whistling in his ears, his heart sank at the clang of the cages being opened. That bastard had locked himself inside and sent the dogs out to get them. Chris changed direction, weaving between the trees, heading to the small creek he'd crossed over on his way there. He slid down the nettle-encrusted bank and splashed into the water before turning and heading upstream as fast as he could. The water was shallow, under a foot in most places, and the creek was only a few meters wide for most of its length. As he ran, panting, he prayed it would be enough. Minutes passed, broken only by the huffing of his breathing as he pushed on, fear slowly lessening as he dared to let himself hope. The first scream rang out within seconds of the dogs being set free. Then it had grown mercifully quiet after that. He moved on, feet growing numb in the narrow stream, but determined to stick to the little creek for a little longer, just in case. He had been hoping the dogs had given up, satisfied with one victim, when a fresh howl rang out all too close, making his guts twist in panic. "Fuck, fuck, fuck," Chris cursed, the words hissing out from between tightly clenched teeth as he picked up the pace. They were closer than he thought. The stream turned a corner, spreading out in deep